Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? No? Well, as of the making of this video, you can find out right now, as Far Cry 3 is included in the PlayStation Plus Extra Games catalogue. We're taking a look at the game on PS5. The version included with PS Plus is the Classic Edition, which is just the single-player campaign. The multiplayer and map editor aren't included here, and so we won't be covering them. We also won't be docking any points, as this is its own little package. We take a look at a game every single week, so if you like what you find here, consider subscribing. We're going down the rabbit hole and letting you know if Far Cry 3 is worth your time.
But I'm here. You hit the ground.
Far Cry 3 is the blueprint for open world games. Even today, Ubisoft got a lot right here, and even 10 years later, the gameplay holds up. Every element here serves a purpose, and it makes for an open world that I want to do everything in. There are three big focuses of gameplay here: the main quests, the outposts, and the radio towers. Under that, you have hunting, side quests, and exploration. Main quests do usually fall into the trap of making you go to a place and shoot some dudes, but the areas and setups of each mission manage to keep things engaging. For every more standard mission, you have a unique one where you use a flamethrower to burn fields whilst listening to dubstep, or fight a giant ink monster, or ride in a helicopter to Ride of the Valkyries. Quests don't overstay their welcome, and are concise, focused chunks of gameplay, but still provide you with options. I only hated one of the main missions, and it was Doppelganger. Outposts are small combat puzzles, but are entirely open to letting you tackle them how you like. You can scope out the area and stealth your way through, or drive a car right through the front gates, or wait for a tiger to walk in and do the hard work for you. The stealthier you are, the more XP you get, so there is some incentive to play things slow and smart. Clearing outposts makes the world a safer place. You'll be less likely to be ambushed by pirates whilst out on the road, and this small detail makes your impact on the Rook Islands tangible. Radio towers are simple platforming puzzles. Even after 10 years of towers in games, these are still pretty fun to climb. These obviously reveal your map as you activate them, but they also unlock free gear in stores, which increases the weapon sandbox you get to play with. Radio towers feel like much less of a chore because they are insanely useful, but you're also getting new toys to play with by activating them. These three main aspects of gameplay flow well into each other. The usual path is that a main quest will lead you to an unknown region, so you'll go to the radio tower to map out the region, and then clear some outposts to give yourself fast travel points. Doing these things gives you XP, and points mean prizes, but in this case, prizes are new takedown moves and skills. This little gameplay flow is very tight on its own, but there is some extra stuff on top, and the majority of it ties in well to the rest of the game. I think hunting is the best incorporation of extra mechanics here. This is how you craft storage upgrades. If you want to carry more ammo, loot, money, or pretty much anything, then you need to hunt and skin animals, and to find animals easily, you need to activate the radio towers. Exploration also stems from the radio towers. When you activate one, you'll get a fun little cutscene showing some points of interest to check out. On top of this, there are collectibles to find, which allow you to unlock signature weapons. These are a fun little extra, but they give relics a purpose beyond an achievement. Finally, there are a selection of side quests. These are pretty basic, but do award XP in cash. I think this is the only element of the game that could veer into boring grind territory. Overall, I'm really happy with all of the gameplay elements present here. Everything serves a purpose, and there is enough variance to keep things interesting, even if the fundamentals can get a bit repetitive. The sandbox also provides great opportunity for craziness to happen, like this moment where I got attacked by a dozen Komodo dragons whilst out on the road. Getting from point A to B always comes with an interesting story. On a ground level, shooting and stabbing feels fun, there are plenty of interesting weapons to play around with, and the takedown system and skills allow you to become a true hunter. My only issue with the gameplay is a broad one, and that's that it's showing its age. I'm having fun, but it's clunky fun. Movement feels touch and go, aim assist is either way too strong or not present at all, which makes weapons feel inconsistent. Checkpoints, especially towards the end of the game, are awful, throwing you back very far. Cars handle like they are driving on ice rather than dirt. They are incredibly slippery. You also have to wait for prompts before being able to interact with things. I had plenty of deaths because I pressed triangle slightly before the prompt and then died to fire. The game is still wildly fun, but it simply doesn't have the refinements present in the sequels. In 2012, this was the best we had, but in 2023, I can't overlook the issues present. I also need to touch on the quick time event boss fights. These are dreadful and ultimately unsatisfying. The game already has a really awesome drug-fueled boss fight. Surely we could have just done this again instead of pressing X to kill the main villain. Still, it's not all bad. We're giving Far Cry 3 a 4 out of 5 for gameplay. There was a lot of care taken to make a world that feels connected, and all of the gameplay systems serve some sort of function to add to the whole package, even if that whole package is showing a bit of age.
Help us free our captive warriors, and I will give you the power you desire.
Far Cry 3 still looks great, but it's not all perfect. The Rook Islands are frankly gorgeous. Lush greenery, blue seas, and plenty of interesting stuff to look at. There were plenty of times when I was caught off guard with just how good the game looks all these years later. I'd also like to touch on the fire. This is a great gameplay system, but it also looks fantastic. It spreads naturally and everything has animations for being set on and dying by fire. When the game goes crazy, the art direction is divine. Every single drug sequence is simply wonderful. I'm just going to let these speak for themselves. Character animations are either phenomenal or awful. There doesn't seem to be any in between. Vaas is the obvious standout. Michael Mando is acting the hell out of this, and it shows in just how Vaas looks, let alone how he sounds. Hoyt, Sam, Buck, Citra and Willis are also animated fantastically. Everyone here is wonderfully expressive, and it allows me to get fully engaged in their story segments. On the other hand, you have some rough character animation. Jason's friends just don't have the polish of the villains. Frankly, in some cases, they look pretty bad, and it has an effect on the narrative. Anyone who isn't part of the main cast is animated pretty terribly. You can really tell where the focus was, and it ends up creating art direction that is very inconsistent when it comes to character animation. Standard animations are a bit dated, but still look good. Weapons feel and sound fun to shoot, and the healing animations are grim in all the right ways. UI design is very function over form, but this is always a neutral thing for me. I'd rather things be simple and work than complicated and confusing. Music runs into the same issues that animation does. There are some fantastic pieces of music here, but also some really generic stuff. Car radios don't have any licensed music, which is really weird considering that there is licensed music in the game. I'd love the option to be able to listen to that one MIA song whilst driving a truck through an enemy base. The main theme remains one of the best pieces of original music in gaming. The rest of the OST falls into the range of decent to forgettable. All I hear when I think of this game is the main theme. Overall, the game, for the most part, still looks great. Some elements have aged wonderfully and still look good today, whilst others would be at home on the PS2. I do think the good outweighs the bad here, and that's what clinches the 4 out of 5 for art direction.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
There is a lot going on here. The story in Far Cry 3 is that a bunch of snotty rich kids get what they deserve. The main thread of the narrative is that you are trying to save your friends, but the insanity of the Rook Islands slowly claims you. This is where Far Cry 3 really stands out, and is the ultimate gameplay meets narrative. Jason starts out as a scared kid, but ends up as a deranged killing machine. Vaas makes a phenomenal foil for Jason, and on its own, this could be a fantastic, simple story of a man losing his mind to save his friends. The problem for me comes in with how much extra stuff is tacked onto the story. Citra is here to try and seduce you into becoming a warrior. Sam, Buck and Willis are fun characters and give the island more depth, but they do feel like detours, even though they are integral to the main plot. I really enjoy Hoyt as a villain, but he just pales in comparison to Vaas, who is the face of the game with a grand total of 20 minutes of screen time. The narrative elements are all pretty good, even great on their own, but together they become a muddled mess. I also find that I didn't care about any of Jason's friends, because you simply don't spend any time with them. There are some nice optional flashback sections, but once your friends escape, you get 1 or 2 cutscenes with them, and that's it. We also get the classic pick an ending, and both of these have good intentions, but are unsatisfying in their own way. The quote-unquote good ending feels like an abrupt change of mind from Jason, and the quote-unquote bad ending makes more thematic sense, but makes no actual sense in its execution. I flip-flopped between giving the narrative here a 3 or a 4. The gameplay narrative link is great, and Vaas is phenomenal, if wildly underused. By and large, I enjoyed the story, but it does feel messy, and both endings are unsatisfying. Ultimately, I'm giving the narrative here a 4 out of 5. The good stuff is great, and the stuff I don't like is still pretty good. I'd do anything to see a version of this game that gives the Jason Vaas insanity arc full room to breathe.
The boat!
Far Cry 3 is a full content packaging, but it's a bit of a mess. You're getting a full single player open world chock full of quests, outposts, towers, and the DLC additions. This is the full Far Cry 3 package. We experienced a few bugs during our playthrough. Sometimes quests would break because the NPCs would get killed by animals, and there was plenty of open world jank. There was never anything that couldn't be fixed by going back to the last checkpoint, but with checkpoints as inconsistent as these, that's a risk I'd rather not take. Settings are showing their age. There are toggles for reticle, vibration, aim assist, weapon tagging, wiki updates, collectible updates, tutorial updates, objective reminders, crafting tips, display XP, and indicators for detection, damage, and grenades. You can invert look, and there is a slider for sensitivity. There are plenty of control schemes, but you cannot remap things to your liking. Audio settings are dire. There is a single slider for master volume, and this is a problem. Everyone in this game mumbles. Without subtitles, you are going to miss so much dialogue because audio is so unbalanced. Gunshots are deafening, whilst Vaas whispers sweet nothings in your ear. There is a toggle for music, just all music, the OST and the licensed stuff. There are also major language options. There is a brightness slider, and you can enable subtitles. There are no further subtitle options. The base subtitles are readable, if a little small, so this isn't the biggest issue, but is compounded by bad sound mixing. Overall, the content offering here is top notch, but there is a lot of jank, and a lot of problems that arise from lack of settings. None of these problems are game breaking, but some do encompass the whole game. We're giving the specs here a 3 out of 5. There's a lot missing here, but it doesn't amount to anything truly terrible.
You are a warrior. You live for battle. Every man you fight dies and deserves to have his life taken from him.
It took me just under 9 hours to beat Far Cry 3. This was with a moderate amount of side content. I'd wager a full 100% run at a maximum of 20 hours, which is still commendable. Hard drive footprint is nice and small at just over 8 gigabytes. You can also save at any time. You'll be plonked back to the nearest base when you reload the game, but you'll never lose any progress. In story missions, checkpoints replace the save system, so you'll just get knocked back to the previous checkpoint. This also means that Far Cry 3 is insanely easy to fit into any length of gaming session. I do have some commitment niggles, but these are not enough to knock a point off. The big one is checkpoints. These can be pretty rough towards the end of the game. If you die, you're going to be sent back a ways. The other niggle is that you manually have to loot everything you kill. There is a skill that auto loots takedown kills, but for the majority of the game, you'll be looking at this animation if you want to have some cash. Loot is very important, and I feel like this process could have been streamlined. Overall, Far Cry 3 has a solid respect for your time and hard drive. If you're here for the main game, you're in for a fun 10-hour romp, and if you want to go for the full 100%, you're looking at about 15 to 20 hours. It's nice that we can end this review on a high. Far Cry 3 gets the full 5 out of 5 on our commitment scale.
I'm going to erase all of it!
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? Far Cry 3 still holds up. If it didn't, it wouldn't have been the foundation for pretty much every open world game of the 2010s. I've been pretty critical here, but the game was ultimately a good time, and I'm glad I went back to revisit it. It's simple. Far Cry 3 is worth your time. It's not as polished as later iterations, but it has a great identity of its own, and is still wildly fun all these years later. Now, before we go, did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
In the skies, you thought you had your finger on the trigger.